In today's video, I wanted to talk about color, 3 ways to choose and coordinate colors for your designs that you create for SL, or really for anything. I think that these could apply. So I just want to share a few tips that have been helpful to me in choosing color palettes for my graphic designs and creations for Second Life over the years. Even though I'm an artist, I've always struggled with picking color schemes for my work. I've talked to people who just have a knack for that, and I'm not one of those people. While I love color and understand the concept of the color wheel, I still was never the type of person who always intuitively knew right away what colors would naturally work together in a design. I'm not going to get into color theory here, but I just want to show these simple ways that have helped me to be decisive and organized with with color in my projects. So I hope this can help you too. Just a note, there are a few different types of color arrangements that will give you colors that work well in your design. Think of them as pairs or sets of color that are on the same wavelength and will make your design pleasing to the eye. So one of those is complementary. I'm sure everyone has heard of complementary colors. These are colors on the opposite side of the color wheel from each other. And then there is analogous, and these are colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. Triad is a set of 3 colors that are apart by equal distance on the color wheel. And then monochromatic, which is just light and dark shades and tints of the same color. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard of these before. There are also other types of schemes such as split complementary and tertiary, but I won't get into all of those in this video. I will probably put out a separate video getting more in depth into color. I just wanted to show you the basics today. So for now, I'll be showing 3 ways to choose colors and make sure they will coordinate well together in your design. One of the first ways to do this is in your graphics editing program, such as Photoshop, Illustrator, GIMP, Inkscape, or whatever. I want to first talk about swatches. So I'm sure most of you who, create for SL have worked with swatches and know what they are. But I just want to point out for those who might not know kind of how they work in a basic sense. So at the top of your screen, if you're working in Photoshop, I'm just going to kind of go down the list. I will show this how it works in GIMP, but I'll get to that in just a bit. So in Photoshop, if you are working in Photoshop, at the top, if you go to Window, you can choose to open, first of all, the color palette, and then you can also choose to open swatches. So in Photoshop, and this is just based off of the version I have, I do subscribe to this suite, and I just, install the updates periodically. So yours might look a little different, but they do have some basic color palettes that are built in that you can just open up and work with, and you can just choose with the color picker whichever color you want, and then obviously if you have a shape you can fill, which I just used the shortcut, which is Shift key and backspace or delete key, but you could go edit, fill with the foreground color, which would be the color you just chose from the swatch. So pretty basic stuff, but they do have all of these different ones here, but they're pretty basic, which is nice, because if this happens to be a palette that works for you, you could just pick from here, and you know that these are all pretty much on the same wavelength, the same tones, and they should look okay together, at least in terms of value. So that's the basics of Photoshop swatches. Now you can import your own swatches by clicking here at the top right and import swatches. I won't do that in this video, but you do have that ability. So if you go over to and you like to work in Illustrator, There is also Swatches palette in Illustrator. Obviously, you would open it the same way at the top, go to Window, and open the panel there. And they usually have some preloaded built-in swatches, groups of swatches that you can work with or choose from. And if you click the top right menu here, they have swatch library with tons of groups of swatches so that you can open and like these are all naturey tones. So that's pretty nice because you have a palette of colors that work together, and looks like you have some complementary going on here and some analogous and different tones. So that would be a way that you could quickly get a palette to work with and know that it'll be harmonious. But also, let's say that you can also create your own groups of swatches both in Photoshop and Illustrator. To do that, you would go to the bottom here, click the folder if you wanted to do a group, name it whatever you want, and then you would just pick a color on the foreground and you would add the new swatch and it would show up here. Sometimes it might be out of place. You could drag it down here to your group and just do as many as you want. But most of you probably already know that in a basic sense, how to work with swatches. But let's say you have one color. Let's just pick a random color that you like, that you have in mind, that you're starting a design or you're starting a brand for yourself, and you really like this like teal color or mint color, but you're just not sure what colors would go well with that to make things look nice and cohesive. I'm just going to create a box here with my color. And if you go over, this is what one really awesome feature I love in Illustrator called Color Guide. So mine happens to be in my tab here. If it's not visible to you, go back up to the top, go to Window and open Color Guide. So here you see I have my like teal color, mint color. It's more of a mint, I guess. And if you drop down this menu, here you have a whole list of palettes that will work well with this particular color. And you have complementary, which the complementary would be this darker orange. You have another complementary, split complementary, several analogous, monochromatic triads. It's really neat. So this could save you a lot of time because you just choose one that you want, one group of colors that you want, and you know that when you work with these colors in your design, they're going to work well together. I really loved when I discovered this feature in Illustrator. And you can also they give you variations of tones. So like once you choose, say you chose split complementary, it's also going to give you the different shades and tints of these colors, these hues. That's pretty awesome. So sometimes what I do is just use these and build my color palettes out of that, which I'll get to in a bit. So next, going over to GIMP. Now, I'm not a GIMP user, so I always have to apologize about my lack of knowledge navigating GIMP whenever I work in it. But you see on the right hand side there is a list of palettes. If you don't see that at the top, you can go to Windows and go to Dockable Dialogues and then choose Palettes, and then it will open this window here, and then you can use what they have. You can explore the different ones that they have, but if you want to create your own palette to build, you can just go to the bottom here and click the plus with a sheet icon on it button and create new palette. Name it whatever you want here at the top, and then you can just go over to your color picker here and say that you want to have this color added to the palette. You would click the same plus button here, but now that you're in the palette, turns into a way for you to create the new entry of that swatch. And then you can just build out swatches from there. It also has this neat little grid option here where you can choose how many squares, how many rows and columns you would like to have for your swatches. So it's pretty cool. And that's the extent of what I know about palettes and GIMP. There are tons of videos on YouTube if you want to know more about that. So that's kind of, and then for Inkscape, those of you who work in Inkscape, which is an awesome program, it was a bit more complex to build a color palette in there, so I'm just going to put a link in the description to another person's video where they describe it really well, how to build up a palette in Inkscape. So a second way to sort of choose colors to use in your design and maybe come up with a palette is to extract colors from photographs. So if you go to open a photo in Photoshop, which it's great to just look through your phone or your camera and see pictures you might have taken while you're out on a walk or outside visiting somewhere, and you might have, you know, had a shot of a sunset or, you know, a bush or flowers. Nature is such a great source. I mean, it's like the source of, you know, color and pigment and natural patterns and things that work well together. So, and that look good to the human eye. So like this, for example, sometimes when I'm creating a graphic design, I will just like, let's say I was going to create some text here. Let's say I was just going to make this into like a social media graphic, and this is not going to be very nice looking, but just to show you this point. So sometimes what I do is just like get the color picker and pick something from one of the tones from the photo. And if you notice here in the Swatches palette of Photoshop, it will kind of, I don't know, like line up all the colors that you've picked from the color picker, which is nice because you can just hop back to another color if you want to at some point that you've worked with while the document's been open. So I'm just going to pick a color from here. Let's say this one, and you can go, or you can do it from the type panel as well. That would make more sense. And whatever shade you pick from the photo, it's going to be cohesive with this image because it, you know, came directly from the image. So it could be anything, any of this. But this is sometimes how I find a way to work with what is here and make things look like they work well together. So, and then you can even just like, sometimes when I'm doing Pinterest graphics or something like that, I play with color a bit and use a couple of different colors. So that's an example of just opening a photograph, whatever it might be, and picking out colors from the photo and building your palette that way. Again, if you had the swatches panel open, you could just, once you have the color in the foreground box over here on the left, you just could add it to the swatches. And so if you had like swatches open and you wanted to add here, you could to whatever menu you have open or whatever group of swatches you have open rather. So it's up to you how you want to stay organized with it, but that's one way to do that. A third way, the last way to kind of get together a color palette that will look nice in your design is to use online color apps. So the first one I love to use, I use it on almost every project that I work on in Photoshop or Illustrator that involves color. It's called the Sessions College Color Calculator at sessions.edu/color-calculator. I'll link these in the description. I love this one because if you just have like one color in mind, so going back over here to Photoshop, let's say that I really love this like pink coral color. If I just get the hex value or the HTML code, whatever you want to call it, number for this specific color, I can go back over here to the app and paste it in. And then all you have to do is just choose complementary or monochromatic or analogous, split complementary, triadic, or tetradic. And I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but these options are awesome because it will give you colors that are naturally, you know, in harmony with that original color you started out with. This is really great. I really love this app. And it will give you the values for the tones too. And also if you have like multiple colors, sometimes I have like a couple of colors that I want to start with, but I don't know what else would go well with it. With those, you can add a couple other colors here and they will just give you different, same thing, different palettes that work well. Sometimes though a couple of them will be disabled, but this is a really great tool and you can export the scheme. I'm assuming by clicking this button. Sometimes I just even screenshot, like if you're on a Mac, it would be like Command Shift 4 and you could just screenshot, but I don't know what it is, or Shift Command 4, sorry, you would drag out a screenshot. For the Windows, it would be the snipping tool, and I can't remember what the keyboard shortcut is for Windows to do a screenshot, but I'm sure most of you know how to do that. And then you could have your color palette. That's one I really love to use. And then another one is colors.co. Colors, I don't know if they pronounce it that way, but anyway, this one's really neat because it's really fast and easy way to get a color palette without having to build it. You just click on make a palette, and then if you hit your space bar, it will just generate all of these random palettes. And then when you see one you like, you just stop there. It'll give you the values here at the bottom. You have ways that you can favorite them, view the shades, different shades of it, where it came from. It's really great. You can move these around. You can like swap them out. It's just an awesome way to get a quick palette without having to think about it. You just go by what you visually like to see. And then the last app and then for these, again, you can just screenshot them, or I think they have an export. I'm sure they have an export feature up here. Yeah, you can export it, save it. The last one is Adobe has a color tool here online, and it's great. And here's the color wheel, so you can go to this tab and just see the color wheel, play with it, move things around, and it gives you a lot of technical info here. A lot of different color schemes here, but what I like to use this for too is you can upload a photo you might have from out in nature or wherever, and it will extract the colors from the photo, so you have a natural palette, colors that naturally work well together. And then you can just screenshot this, or you can save it, or you can get the color information here or copy those codes. And then I thought they had a way to add it to your library, because that's another thing is that Adobe, they're not the cheapest programs, but they have what is called libraries, and you could save these colors to the libraries if you use that. And I'll show you that right now, because that is something that I work with all the time as well. When you're in Photoshop or Illustrator, and let me see, like let's say that I have an image here. This is like a set of mesh that I did, and I want to, pull a color palette from this so that I can create an ad or a vendor template, something that will be, in harmony with the photo. What I can do is over here in the libraries panel, you can create different groups of files. Usually every time I have a design client or I have a project for myself, I will create a different library and name it. And within that library, you can upload subfolders of things like different color palettes. Here I have, this is not for this image, this is one that I pulled from another project, but just to show you, you could go down here, click this folder, create a new group, and I would call it like test palette, and just for demonstration. And you could go over here and just start building it out. You could like take colors from the photo directly with the color picker, and then once you have it as your foreground color, you could upload it to your library. And it didn't put it in my folder there, but I probably didn't have that selected or something. So you could just do that, pick colors that are naturally in the image and then add them to your group. And after doing that, you can build up a nice palette that will probably work well together. And then once you have this library created in Photoshop, if you were to jump over to Illustrator and say that you wanted to start creating an ad with this photo, which, let me see if I can do this. Copy. Okay, so I have my photo. Let's just pretend this is going to be like a vendor ad or something like that, whatever. Then you could just start building out something using those same colors from the palette you were starting to build in Photoshop in your library. So you would open the libraries tab in Illustrator and go down and find, let's see, what library did I put it in? I think I threw it in the wrong, it's under my library for Trailway. Okay, so Trailway library, and then down here is my test palette. So I can just grab colors from there and they are going to work. So I hope that gives you an idea of how easy it is to work between apps when you are using Adobe. If you don't have Adobe and you still want to be consistent, there are some ways you can do that, like ways that you can just stick to one group of colors that will be consistent across all of your designs or be associated with your brand or your creative projects or creative project. So one way to do that without having the use of libraries is to just create like a color swatch PDF or sort of like a contact sheet of colors. So like, let's say file, let me just do this here, layers, and turn this on. And you could just literally, this is what I've done before sometimes for design clients when I want to show them some options for colors to choose from for their design. I'll just create like a contact sheet, and it doesn't have to be anything super, I don't know why that doesn't want to, fancy, but if you shift and click all of these shapes together over on the right, go to align. If you don't have align, go to the top window and open the align panel, and then you could equally distribute them that way. And actually I need to size these down a bit. So you could just build it out this way too, and then go over to your library or wherever you have your swatches, or you could go to the Illustrator swatches and start creating like a contact sheet or a color palette this way. And then you would just, you could either screenshot this or you could go to file and then like print it as a PDF or export it as a JPEG, whichever you prefer. And then you have your color palette. So that's one way. Another way is, obviously we already talked about, the online apps. So if you use one of these color tools, you could just screenshot from there or save the image out. Also, one last way is that if you are working in one of your programs, your graphic editing programs, you could just copy codes. So you could get the color you want in the foreground there, click it, double click to open the color picker or whatever, it's called in your program, and then just copy the code at the bottom, and then you could jump to another program like Photoshop or GIMP or whichever, and if you want to set that color foreground to the same one, you just double click the color picker, paste the code, click OK, and then you've got the same color in the other program. So I think it's important to try to be consistent with the color choices you make, because that will make your projects and your brand look cohesive, and that will be more pleasant to the eye. It will create that sense of an aesthetic. So I hope I didn't miss anything. I hope this helps. Creating color palettes is something I've struggled with over the years myself, and this is just, I'm not like an expert, but this is just something I put together based on things that have worked for me over the years. So I hope it helps you. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you in the next video.